What do 58 British Columbian healthcare workers and over 5,000 citizens have in common? On November 9th, they all came together for a day of action against BC's new Health Act.
It will extend mandates now to every health profession, where that wasn't the case before. It will also mean that as a doctor, if you provide advice that is your medical opinion, that's the best advice knowing on a patient, and it goes against what the government says, you could be fined up to $200,000 and spend 6 months in jail.
Jerry Humphrey here with Rebel News, standing in front of the BC legislature after an event took place after question period. That event was over 5,000 people, many of whom were healthcare workers, signing postcards that were then delivered to the Conservative Party of B.C. leader, John Rustad, who then went into the House during question period and presented them. Take a look.
Thank you, Honourable Chair, and I rise today to present a petition, and this is on behalf of the 17,500 signatures that we presented last spring. These are thousands more petitions in the form of postcards that will be going to every member in this legislature. And the petition is an effort that was led, of course, by many of the frontline healthcare workers, the doctors, the nurses, chiropractors, and many others that are so concerned about the new legislation that is going to be implemented this year. So thank you, Mr. Speaker, for presenting this petition.
Now, I was in the gallery while that occurred alongside close to 60 different healthcare professionals who came in person, all sounding the alarm against the Healthcare Professions Occupation Act. That act I've done many reports on before it was passed. It was called Bill 36, and critics of it believe that it's going to grant the government sweeping powers to dictate how they are supposed to advocate for their patients. There's much more to be concerned about this bill, and in this report, I'm going to interview Rustad a little bit further about that, as well as touch base with one of two of the main organizations that were behind the postcard campaign. Her name is Ingrid with BC Rising, but I also want to mention that the Canadian Society for Science and Ethics in Medicine was also spearheading this campaign, and you can find out information about both of those groups in the description box below.
The public and the professions at large have no idea about this act and the impact that it's going to have on their professions and the health of patients.
So over 5,000 were given to John Rustad today, and he, I guess, somehow made that into a petition. We'll show you a little bit of what happened in the House, and then we'll get to him.
Today in the gallery with the healthcare workers are here. They represent the backbone of our healthcare system. They have spent decades serving patients, serving their community, caring for the people in their communities. Many of these healthcare professionals have taken time away from serving their patients to be here today because they feel it is that important. They're concerned about healthcare. They're concerned about the fact of their shortages in staffing. They're concerned about the ER closures. They're concerned, quite frankly, about the loss of freedom in healthcare. And they're concerned about the medical tyranny that this government is putting on the control of healthcare in this province. So the question, Mr. Speaker, that I'm proud to be asking here today on behalf of thousands of healthcare workers across this province, and as well as on behalf of the members that are here present today on the Canadian Society for the Science and Ethics in Medicine, to the Premier, will you acknowledge the feedback from thousands of healthcare workers from across this province who are asking you to pause on the Health Professions Occupations Act and return to the drawing board, or do you intend to continue down this path of medical tyranny?
Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker. The Health Professions and Occupations Act was passed by the legislature. Honourable Speaker, it was the result of years of consultation. First consultation leading to the Caton Report, then unprecedented consultation with all parties in the legislature, then unprecedented consultation with Indigenous people. The vast majority of that consultation took place with health professionals. It had record hours of debate in this legislature, 47 hours of debate. And as the member will know, it was supported at second reading by the Conservative Party's House Leader, who spoke in favor of it in the debate, including the important issues of transparency, which it provides for patients. We are implementing the Health Professions and Occupations Act, and we will continue to do so.
So what we're seeing is healthcare professionals that have taken time away from their patients, that have taken time away from their communities. They care about serving patients and communities. They care about healthcare and about delivering good healthcare, and they are concerned. The Health Professions Act is taking away their ability to be able to service their patients in the way that they want to. If they want to give medical advice, the Health Act is actually saying they have to follow the government's guidelines, not their own experience, not their own years of profession and their knowledge of the patients themselves. And it's just wrong, and it goes much, much deeper than that. But this is why they've taken time here today to protest to the NDP government to say, look, pause this act. Let us actually do a proper engagement with healthcare workers, not just with the boards that have signed non-disclosure agreements, but actually be able to get the feedback and get it right so that we can better serve the people in British Columbia.
You had a significant group of healthcare workers in the gallery today, and you had a sea of postcards. Tell us about how many postcards you had and what the process was, because now it's a petition, just for clarity.
So we're actually building on a petition that we brought in last year. We had 17,500 signatures from people across this province. It's one of the larger petitions that the legislature's ever seen. And so what the healthcare professionals said is they wanted to do something more. So what they did is they actually put together postcards where they would go out to patients, where they would go to healthcare workers and get them to sign these postcards that will actually now be delivered to MLAs, demanding sort of a response and demanding to stand up and fight against this bill, fight against what's going on. And so the hope is that, all of this is just one more fight in an ongoing battle to change our healthcare for the better. And I'm really proud of the healthcare workers and all the time they've put in to do this. I think it was somewhere between 5,000 and 6,000 of these postcards that we delivered in the legislature here today.
And counting, and you can continue to send those cards. We have the link to do so in the description box below. But one of the responses that Health Minister Adrian Dix gave is that this bill, which is now a legislation, has had so many hands on it. He's saying there's been so many people consulted. What do you say in response to that?
Well, what I would say is the initial consultation they did was nothing about the actual bill. It was just some very high-level things that everybody could agree on. When it actually came to getting into developing the bill, that's when they had these non-disclosure agreements put in place. Nobody could talk about it. They weren't even able to tell their members within their health colleges. And so to me, it's very disingenuous that he comes out and says they had this great consultation, because they didn't. And it is sad the way this minister portrays this act and what it is doing in terms of healthcare in this province. And I want to ask, today at noon, we will have healthcare professionals out on the back steps of the legislature. The Conservative Party will be out joining them to talk about this issue and to talk about healthcare in this province. And I invite all members to come out and to hear their words, to hear what they will be presenting. Because they believe passionately in this, and they disagree with this minister, particularly in this heavy-handed and tone-deaf approaches we're even hearing here in the answer here today. So my question, quite frankly, Mr. Speaker, to the Premier is, during the government's so-called consultation process that the minister just outlined, why were so many non-disclosure agreements signed with British Columbia's healthcare boards?
Honourable Speaker, the Health Professions and Occupations Act was the result of unprecedented consultation, including, and very significantly, consultation with opposition parties, Honourable Speaker, who were involved in its development. Honourable Speaker, the legislature is responsible for the law, but everyone was involved in its development. One of the really important principles that all members, the member for Cowichan, the leader of the third party, the member for Colonial Lake Country, who represented their caucuses in those discussions, was the importance also, in a time when we've had the In Plain Sight report, of consulting with Indigenous people. So not only was there unprecedented consultation with the broader community, with health professionals, with opposition parties, and a very significant debate in the legislature, Honourable Speaker, but there was significant consultation with Indigenous people that is reflected in this act. I think it's an extraordinary thing.
Now, I know many people, including healthcare professionals, don't even know that this act exists. So what is one or two things that you think are the most egregious about it?
Well, I think, first of all, the fact that it will extend mandates now to every health profession. where that wasn't the case before. It will also mean that as a doctor, if you provide advice that is your medical opinion, that's the best advice knowing on a patient, and it goes against what the government says, you could be fined up to $200,000 and spend 6 months in jail. And so what this is doing is it's actually creating a really negative environment for our healthcare workers. It makes it much more difficult to attract healthcare workers, and we're seeing doctors leaving this province because they do not want to be under this type of tyranny. And so that is the impact of this bill, along, of course, with the other measures. We have a crisis in our healthcare system. We need everybody back working that we can have in our healthcare system.
If you appreciate that Rebel News has never backed down from exposing medical tyranny, please consider chipping in to help us cover the cost to do so. Today, I had to take a ferry to get here. I had to do gas, and we can't do any of that without you. We are independent. We don't take money from Trudeau like 95% of media. So if you go to rebelfieldreports.com and chip in a few bucks, that will help us cover the expense for me to get here and back and bring you this important news.